Welcome, everybody, to this edition of the Tee 'em Up podcast. A busy week in the NBA, and I'm joined here, as always, by Jarrett Huff to break everything down. Jarrett, how's it feeling, man?
Well, my Chicago Bulls beat the Brooklyn Nets last night, so I'm feeling on top of the world. We're up 2-0 in the season series against them. It's been a good week of basketball, and life's good right now, sports-wise,
Yeah,
unless you look at the football side of things, but
Yeah.
I'm not, so I'll stick to basketball.
Good week of basketball there for your Chicago Bulls. But you know who wasn't a good week of basketball for? And that was the Oklahoma City Thunder. You know, we had a little bit of NBA history that took place this week. And for the Thunder, not a good type of history is they played the Grizzlies, and they were absolutely not an overstatement. They were dominated in this game. It was not even a contest in every sense of the word. The Grizzlies walked away with a 73-point victory, setting the NBA record for the largest margin of victory in a game. And Jarrett, not every day we get to see a new NBA record, but what do you make of this game?
Well, that was the ugliest NBA record I've ever seen. I believe the Thunder were on the receiving end of like another NBA record where they had the biggest home loss.
Yeah, they now have
last
both.
season.
Yeah.
So they have the biggest home loss and the biggest loss ever in NBA history in back-to-back seasons. That's insane. And to make matters even worse, Grizzlies didn't even have Ja Morant.
No.
And I don't know where you are on the Grizzlies, but I don't think this is a team that should be blowing out another team by 73 points. This would be like something we would have seen the 2016 Warriors do to a team, would be blowing them out by 73. You wouldn't expect a team like Memphis without their best player to do that. There's no excuse for that. I don't care how bad this Thunder team is. As a professional basketball team, you can't be losing a game by 73 points with professional athletes on your roster. It's ridiculous. I've never seen a worse game in my life.
Yeah, this was crazy. And the Thunder, just to add a little bit of context, they were without SGA. But obviously, like you just said, the Grizzlies were without Ja Morant. So both teams arguably without their best players coming into this one. So no one was really like circling this one on the calendar as a game they really got to check out. But it was crazy. And I started to dig into the numbers a little bit. For the Grizzlies, the lowest point total that they scored in a quarter in that game was 31. And they did that in the first quarter. They followed that up with 41, 41, and 39 in 4 quarters of basketball. And they held the Thunder under 20 points in 2 different quarters. Memphis had 9 players score in the double digits and didn't have to play any of their starters over 21 minutes in that game. You know, we see blowouts all the time in the NBA, but this one was just embarrassing for OKC. They never really stood a chance. It was from the get-go. It looked like it was going to be a blowout. No one really expects the game to kind of balloon to 73 points. I mean, a lot of times we see these blowouts where teams are up 20 or 30 and it kind of stays there because teams are going to take their foot off the gas and just kind of get some younger guys and get some bench guys some minutes. But this isn't what happened. I mean, Grizzly put in their bench and their bench played almost better than their starters. It was not a case of just taking their foot off the gas. But, you know, we've already seen so far in this league, or so far in this year, a head coach get fired early on in this season. And I am not in any way advocating for coach. I think it's Daigneault. I hope I'm saying that right. I look up the phonetic spelling of that. I'm not advocating for him to get fired, but I will say that a game like this will put you on an early hot seat. That's all I know. Like grabbing headlines, and those are not good headlines.
Like you can make one adjustment to maybe lose by 50 instead of 73. Was there's literally nothing you could do? Like that's bad coaching. That's
even
bad
just
playing.
Slow the game down. Like, you know, at that point, just slow it down, take as much of the shot clock as you possibly can, you know, tighten up on what you can on defense, work on some things, change up the defense, go into his zone, do something from the head coaching position to shorten this game. But we saw none of that. And it was one of those games that no one was really sitting at home watching. But when you came across on your phones, like, hey, OKC lost by 73. A lot of people are like, oh, well, it was the Thunder. So, you know, it's okay. But, man, that's crazy. And I kind of like the Thunder. I kind of like it. It seems like they fight a lot of games. This one, they just didn't have it, man. That was an embarrassing one.
This is the team that beat the Lakers twice this season somehow.
Yeah. The Lakers, we'll get to the Lakers a little bit later on because we've kind of been putting them on the back burner because we've just kind of waiting and see approach, but we'll talk about them in a little bit later. But so not a good week for Oklahoma City there. But I'll tell you what, two teams in the Western Conference that really put on a show this week was the Phoenix Suns and the Golden State Warriors. And we were fortunate enough to see the top two teams in the Western Conference match up twice this week. Suns were attempting to keep their month-long winning streak going. So they won the first matchup in a tight contest where they even lost Devin Booker mid-game. Ended up dropping that second game to Golden State just a few days later to end their winning streak at 18. So, Jarrett, what did this week tell you about the NBA's top teams?
Well, what I can tell you is the Suns did very, very, very well at no lose November. They were the only team to achieve it.
Oh yeah.
And I think this is the Western Conference Finals preview right here. These two games showed that they match up very well. I mean, the Suns, even without Devin Booker for like more than half the game, were able to take out the Warriors, who have been on fire all season long, and preserve their win total for at least another game. And then, of course, without Devin Booker for an entire game, the Warriors came back and kind of blew out the Suns a little bit. But I'm not too concerned about that because the Suns weren't at full health. I can't wait till the Warriors get back to full health when Klay Thompson comes back, because this is going to be a very interesting series. I believe they play each other 2 more times this season, so we'll get 2 more looks at this before everything's said and done. But yeah, I would be willing to put money on that. This is going to be the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, the scheduling gods really did us a favor by putting these two teams, almost back to back. There are a few days in between, but game one definitely did not disappoint. I was really impressed with the Suns' ability to overcome that loss to Booker. Sometimes it's a lot harder to lose a star in the middle of a game when you think that you're going to have his output as far as the box score numbers than it is to go into a game where you know that you're not going to have that guy. And they really overcame that, and they were able to hold off Steph and company in that game. They really locked down Steph in game one. It's probably the worst game he's played all season, if not for the last few seasons. But the biggest thing that game one really taught me was that Chris Paul, man, at his age, still one of the best closers in the NBA. He took over down the stretch, handling the basketball, drawing fouls. They were getting late shots and good shots in the shot clock to shorten the game towards the end. And then just the defense, man, Ayton, Bridges, and Crowder. Those 3 guys down the stretch, that last like 8 minutes, I can't even tell you how many steals they got. It was great. It really was. The difference in that game led to that win over the Warriors. And game 2 was tougher, still missing D-Book, playing the second night of a back-to-back. They beat Detroit just the night before, and then having to go on the road and play at the Warrior Stadium that kind of just had, the end of the streak kind of written all over it. But credit to the Warriors who came out there and got their revenge in that second game. But, and the Warriors, it was a lot of key guys off the bench that play key roles. And what about the resurgence of Gary Payton II, and how about Juan Toscano-Anderson? Like, those guys all of a sudden coming out of nowhere. We've seen for a while now what Jordan Poole is capable of, but these Warriors, man, they're deep. But for me, it was just great to see these two top teams go up against each other this early on in the season, because we normally don't get a chance to see that yet.
Yeah, I have to say this Warriors bench is probably better than any bench in the NBA. And it's kind of crazy because you look on paper and, like, if you're only thinking back to a few years ago, this bench doesn't look like anything to really scoff at. But these guys have all emerged this year, especially Jordan Poole, who he's kind of filling in for Klay Thompson right now. He's been amazing. I can't wait to see what his role is going to be when Thompson comes back, if he's going to be a guy off the bench or if they find a way to keep him in the starting lineup.
He'll put himself in that 6 man of the year conversation. If Klay comes back to start starting, and he could be that number 1 guy off the bench. Yeah, that'll be interesting.
Yeah. Juan Toscano-Anderson was awesome. He was hitting big shots. And then Gary Payton Gary Payton II would just come in, make big energy plays. He's almost like the West Coast Alex Caruso right now, where he's just getting the passing lane, poking the ball out, going down, slams, stuff like that. Like, he's
does the dirty work.
And he's playing bigger than his size too. Like, you'll see him in the post. He had a nice little jump hook over, I can't remember who it was. And he was just hitting some big shots. And I've always been big on Gary Payton II. I've always advocated for sons of former superstars. Like, I want to see him succeed because it's just nice to see old names pop back up. Yeah. And he's been trying to find his place in the league like the last 7 seasons, and I'm glad it looks like he's finally found his place where he could put together a solid NBA career, I hope.
Yeah. I looked him up earlier. I think he's only like 6'3", but he's got hops completely out the gym. And I think on his basketball reference, he's listed as a point guard small forward, which I thought was interesting because he's sized like a point guard. He has the size. He's like the Steph Curry type. He's a little more built. But like you said, he could play down low. He can bang a little bit in that 6'3" frame. And the fact that he can jump over anybody on the court is just an added bonus because even Gary Payton said, yeah, I don't know where that came from because Gary Payton didn't have that. And then also just an interesting note on Gary Payton when I was doing some research earlier, I love that on Basketball Reference sometimes we get to see nicknames that we don't exactly never have heard of.
Some of them are wild.
And Gary Payton, who was known as the Glove, I saw Gary Payton II. His nickname on Basketball Reference is the Mitten.
I like it.
The Mitten.
I like it. It's fitting.
It really is. And he's living up to his name. And hopefully he's around to stay for the long haul, can really carve out a nice role in the NBA. And I'm sure the Warriors at this point, they are very fortunate that they have him on his roster. But
quick little interesting fun fact about Gary Payton and his kids.
Mm-hmm.
He actually has a son that is older. You know what his name is?
Who's that?
Gary Payton Jr. And so he's almost like an exact clone of Gary Payton Sr.
Mm-hmm.
And then he names his son that's in the NBA right now, Gary Payton II.
Wow.
So
that's interesting.
That's kind of like on what's that boxer's name? George Foreman? Hasn't he named like all his kids George Foreman something like that?
Yeah, he's got like 3 or 4 kids that are all named George or something like that.
Yeah, so I don't know. I just thought it'd be a little interesting thing to throw in for those that don't know.
Yeah, dude, But anyways, after around a month of anticipation where I know both of us have been kind of waiting to see what was going to happen with this, both of our teams, Chicago and Miami, were being investigated into tampering into the acquisitions of Lonzo Ball and Kyle Lowry. But the NBA finally announced that both those teams will be forfeiting their next available second-round draft pick due to apparent tampering into the acquisition of those players. So, Jarrett, now that we know what's coming from this, did the NBA get this right, or what are your thoughts?
To me, from the bull side of thing, I can cover the bull side more. It doesn't bother me at all. I'm not fazed by it. It clearly, if it's only a second round pick, whatever they found wasn't too serious. And with that, I just look at it this way. All right, Lonzo Ball's acquisition for the Bulls has worked out really well so far, and I expect it to continue to work out for years to come. We gave up Garrett Temple. We gave up Tomas Satoransky, cash, and a second-round pick. And that was an absolute fleecing of the Pelicans at that time. Now we're adding an extra second-round pick onto that. So, okay, we gave them up for 2 second-round picks, 2 players that are barely rotation players at this point, and cash. We still fleeced the Pelicans in that trade. I'm not upset about it. We still we're not giving up any more serious draft capital. We're fine. If we really like a guy in the second round, maybe we can pick him up off the undrafted. If that guy falls, I'm not concerned at all. Doesn't bother me. I just equate it to we just threw an extra pick in the trade.
Yeah,
a trade that we already won by a landslide.
Yeah. See, I'm a little disappointed in the league for this, and it's not due to the punishment itself. For me, it's the fact that they haven't released any sort of their so-called findings. I'm a firm believer in probably 99% of the free agency or trade acquisitions that go around the league, that there's tampering in it. I think there's some sort of what the NBA would consider tampering as far as their communication and their rules that they put in place. So for me, the punishment, it's not a big one. Obviously, I completely understand that. And in the NBA, a lot of the times a second round draft pick really doesn't mean much. And they're few and far between where those guys even become role players in the NBA. So I'm not upset about the punishment. I'm just more upset with the lack of information that we've gotten from the league office, where normally the NBA is very upfront. They kind of put everything on the table. They're fan first, player first. And I think things are kind of being kept in the dark right now. And I'm not okay with leaving the fans in the dark. We really don't know what happened in this tampering case. Like you said, we can kind of deduct that it wasn't very serious just because it was only a second round draft pick. But, for me, it's kind of a bad look on the NBA office. And, the Heat, they announced right after this happened, literally minutes, they had it prepared where they just kind of said, they disagree with the decision. but they're moving forward. And I think both Miami and Chicago are just going to put their head down, move forward, and say, all right, this is what the league came back with. We may not agree and may not think that, we tampered, or we may not think that we're the only ones in the league who are tampering, but just move forward, go out that second round draft pick, and just, enjoy your players, because that's how it's just going to turn out.
Yeah. And right now, Chicago and Miami are contending to win right now, and losing a but potentially late second round pick. Yeah. It's not going to kill them. So
no. And those guys, I mean, don't get me wrong. There are some second round draft picks that they've become Hall of Famers, but it's few and far between. I mean, Miami, they've had a lot of success in the second round, so it hurts them maybe a little bit more than most teams, because some of their guys, I'm pretty sure Duncan Robinson was a second round draft pick. He's been starting for them for a few years, and Kendrick Nunn was a second round draft pick who's now over with the Lakers, but they've had some success there, so it will hurt them a little bit more as far as their draft capital. But like you said, hopefully both these teams are going to be towards the top of the Eastern Conference when it's all said and done, and it's not going to be high draft picks that they're giving away anyways. And I'd much rather see a second round draft pick given up than a first round draft pick. But so as we move on from tampering and we finally know what was to come, we were waiting for about a month to find out after this whole news started to come out. But I kind of wanted to reach over into another segment. So we're starting to reach the point here this season where these early surprises that are starting to come back to earth, and some of these good teams that got off to slow starts are kind of, pushing their way back to the pack. But Jared, I just kind of want to know from you, what is a team do you see making a strong or stronger push in the coming weeks that you would kind of label as a team to really keep your eye on?
Well, I'm going to say is a team that I think the general NBA public of fans have mostly been keeping their eye on. It's the Chicago Bulls. That's my team right now. Everyone was, aside from, I would say, Bulls Nation had lower expectations for this team this year, where it was between some people saying, they're probably going to be a 6th seed. I think I had them as 5th in our preseason rankings. And then some people were like, yeah, they'll be playing for like the 10th seed in the playing spot or something like that, which I thought was ridiculous, first off. But now you look at this Bulls team, they're beating good teams. Yeah. They're beating good teams consistently. They have a few hiccups here and there with maybe letting their foot off the gas late in games, or there's questions about their size, which I do think they're going to make a move at some point this season to bring in another body down low, a talented big, which I think is what they need to do. But this team is good. This is a top 4 team in the East right now. They're only half a game back off of first to the team they beat last night in Brooklyn. Mm-hmm. And I think this Bulls team should be upgraded beyond a potential contender in the East to potential contender to get out of the East. Yeah. I think the Bulls have that potential. We haven't seen them play the Bucks yet this year, which that's farther down the line. Super excited for when that does happen, because I really want to see how we match up. But their schedule this week is probably going to be the toughest it is for the rest of the season, because we play the Nuggets tomorrow. We're recording this on Sunday, so we play the Nuggets on Monday. We play the Heat on Wednesday, and then we play a different team on Wednesday. I can't remember who it is. We play the Heat, I believe, on Saturday. So there we have like a 3-day rest to face basically our toughest opponent for the rest of the year. And then beyond that, we're playing the Cavs, we're playing the Pistons, we play the Lakers one more time. And then there's a bunch of like cupcake teams to close out the 2021 calendar year. The Bulls could make a really big run. And I think everyone should pay attention and respect this team. This team fights hard, they play smart, and they have 2 top 10 MVP candidates. What else can I say?
Yeah, and it's definitely a good pick for a team to watch. And I told you a little bit before, but Jared, I'm not going to lie to you. I wanted to add this segment just because I wanted to talk about this one team in particular. And it's a team that I'm quickly becoming a fan of, and I never thought I would. And I'm going to once again invite you onto the bandwagon. If you want to hop on, there's still room for you. But I'm talking about the Cleveland Cavaliers, man. I'm doing it. I don't care. Cleveland is a legit team. Cleveland is no easy out. And I can't believe that I'm saying this. They're currently sit at 13-10. They're ahead of the Hornets. They're ahead of the 76ers. They're ahead of the Hawks. And they're just a half game behind Miami for the 5th seed in the Eastern Conference. And this is a team that we definitely didn't have in our playoffs even picture. They've all of a sudden put themselves there. Evan Mobley, who was down with an injury, is now back and playing just like what he was before he was injured. I saw something their record without him. I think they were 0-4. They really kind of struggled without him, but since they came back, they've now won 4 straight. They are a legit team. They're just talented. Evan Mobley to me is a future superstar. Darius Garland is really stepping up, taking a step forward with the absence of Colin Sexton. Jared Allen is developing into a great big man. All of a sudden, he's putting up 29 and 12, it seems like, every single night. Kevin Love is really kind of taking this leadership role that we haven't seen from him, where it seemed like his main goal was to just get out of Cleveland. All of a sudden, it seems like he's kind of embracing these young guys, and especially a team that has such talented big men that can still shoot the ball outside now with Evan Mobley, Jared Allen, and Lauri Markkanen. He's kind of just teaching them like, hey, I was doing this before you guys were even here. I can kind of show you the ropes a little bit. And he's playing well himself. We've kind of seen twice now where obviously if LeBron's in town, Cleveland was the team to beat. Cleveland was one of the hottest tickets. LeBron leaves, they fall apart. We've seen that now twice with his 2 departures from Cleveland, but they've officially risen from the ashes in my mind. They have built around good draft picks. They're acquiring younger players in the Lauri Markkanen, who is talented. Obviously, the Bulls went a different direction with him, but there's not a lot of teams in the NBA right now that I would say has a brighter future in the coming years with the growth and development of their players than the Cleveland Cavaliers. And in my mind, it's just the start of it. And I'm going to go on record as I'm on the Cleveland Cavaliers bandwagon. Not this year, but they are a team that I'm quickly becoming a fan of. And I invite you to join in the bandwagon, my man.
I'm not going to lie. I'm paying a little more attention to them now because every time I check the standings the next day, like, I'm not going to lie, I really haven't seen any Cavs games this year. So I don't know how well they are playing beyond just checking in or seeing occasional highlights or just watching Evan Mobley stuff. But like, I always check the standings about every morning. I'm like, oh, the Cavs are still in playoff contention.
Hanging on.
Weird. And I'm starting to think this team's not going to go away. I'm not going to lie to you. I don't think I even had them in playing game contention.
Me neither.
Because they're completely off my radar. And I want to propose a little thing.
Okay.
So LeBron has 2 years left on his season and a half left on his contract.
Yeah.
I believe he signed an extension to keep him in Los Angeles through 2023.
Yeah, I think he has a player option after that, which he'll probably opt out of. Yeah.
Lakers thing, not looking too hot right now, I mean, Westbrook.
Don't say it.
Some friction. Anthony Davis, I really don't think he's as good as what the rest of the world thinks he is, and can't lead a team to save his life. Maybe we see the return part 2.
No.
This Cavs roster is looking really nice.
No way. There's no way.
Bronny's going to be coming out of high school.
The only way LeBron ends up back in Cleveland is if Cleveland drafts Bronny. Then he'd return, because LeBron could walk in that office and just say, I'm playing here. And they say, okay, what do you want? And if Bronny was there, he would come and do it in a heartbeat, just because, especially at that point in his career, he said he just wants to extend it long enough to play with his son, which he said would be the greatest accomplishment of his career. But there's no way. There's no way. Man.
It could be a fun storyline, because I think LeBron's still going to be an all-star level player at 41 when he'd be able to make this move.
Yeah.
So I'm just saying, if he's not feeling satisfied and secure emotionally that he's the GOAT by that point, he feels like there's still too many people that think Jordan's the GOAT. I think you could see, well, Jordan didn't go back somewhere twice and win at the age of 41.
Yeah.
I could see maybe he'd want to do that. You never know.
I will say, though, I'm just kind of banking on the development. It's very fun, but the development of the players there, if they kind of keep that young core together and those guys develop the way that I think they're going to, LeBron would be the perfect addition to that team. Because if they got Evan Mobley and Lauri Markkanen, who are big guys that are outside shooting the three, Evan Mobley looks like I think he's the best defender on their team easily. He's a rim protector, but does everything. LeBron would fit in really well with that team if that's the road we're going down.
LeBron is the point guard.
Yeah, you get rid of, at this point,
Clearly,
you get rid of Sexton. Yeah, Darius Garland's taking a step up as kind of that 2 guard position. He's really scoring the basketball well. So I don't know. It's for me, it's just a team to keep your eye on, man. I wanted to find a way to talk about Cleveland because I've been paying real close attention to them, and I thought they deserved a little bit of love, and I wanted to get them in
Oh,
there.
they do. They deserve their flowers, I'd say.
Exactly, man. But now we want to move on to our final set. Well, not our final segment. Our second to last segment is we're going to bring back buy or sell, and everybody knows how this works. Is I'm going to list off a statement, Jared, and you're going to tell me if you're buying or selling what I'm offering you. So
I brought my money today.
let's do it, man. We'll see where the market goes. So, Jared, are you buying or selling that the Western Conference winners will either be Golden State or Phoenix?
I'm buying that 100%. I said earlier in this podcast that I think this is going to be the Western Conference Finals matchup. It's going to be one or the other. I still think Warriors probably are going to have the edge. I think they're the favorite, especially with Klay coming back, James Wiseman. I'm sure we'll see on the court not too long from now. But yeah, I'm 100% buying that without a doubt. How about yourself?
See, it's funny that you say it the way that you say that you're 100% buying it, because I literally wrote down I'm buying this 99% of the way. And my only
99.
hesitancy, and you're gonna flame me for it. My only hesitancy is my still remaining faith and trust in LeBron James and the fact that he can round this roster into shape and make a run. That's the only thing. It's the 1%, don't get me wrong, is dying. They've shown no signs of it, but I've seen it in the past. I've seen, the Cleveland teams who look like they're dead in the water, and all of a sudden they're in the finals. That just seems like what he does.
They trade everybody.
Who says they're not going to do that this year?
Oh, they guarantee this roster's not going to look the same.
That's
after
all right.
The All-Star break.
They'll get a couple key guys in buyout markets. They'll probably, who knows? They might trade Russell. It'll be interesting. But in a few more weeks, if I still see the Lakers struggling with no signs of light at the end of the tunnel, then I'll probably be 100% sure. But there's without a doubt, these are the two teams in the West that should feel the best about themselves. And right now they're really making the statement that the West runs through them, and it's going to run through them. But so Jarrett, the next one here, are you buying or selling that Portland should be worried about Lillard's slow start?
I'm going to sell that. Damian Lillard is one of the best guards in the NBA, and he's going to be this team's only hope to get back into the season. And I fully expect that they will, because Damian Lillard he's going to figure it out. He's one of the most gifted scorers in the NBA right now, arguably one of the most gifted scoring guards in NBA history. And he's going to turn it around. The West is so close towards the bottom. And I wouldn't really even say the bottom, because you look midway through, I think the 5th seed is just at 500 right now. Mm-hmm. So there is some room for error early on in the standings, but they have to dig themselves out quick. They can't let this go on too long, or else they could really find themselves in a hole. But I'm not worried. They're saying at 11 and 13 right now. I fully expect Damian Lillard to figure it out. We've seen him have slow starts to the season before. I'm not concerned.
Yeah, I'm selling this as well. The Blazers should not be worried about Lillard so far. He's struggling 20 games in, but we all know who he is. He's Dame time, man. He's an MVP type caliber player when he's firing on all cylinders. He's my MVP pick to start the season. Doesn't look like that's going to happen unless he really kicks it into gear. But Dame, he's had these rough patches in the past. We've seen what he's capable of. He's going to catch fire. It seems like almost any game, any week now, where he's going to have one of those games where he drops 48 on someone and knocks down 11 threes, because that's just the type of player that he is. But I'm not ready to give up yet on his season. I don't think the Blazers should be ready to give up on their season yet, especially over in the Western Conference. But so, Jarrett, going back to the Lakers and my faith in LeBron here, are you buying or selling that the Los Angeles Lakers situation is closer to imploding rather than thriving?
I'll buy that. This is a mess. They can't seem to put a consistent lineup together. They have players on the roster that make no sense. Like, why do you have both Dwight Howard and DeAndre Jordan? And why is DeAndre Jordan even part of your roster? He makes no sense. They don't have enough shooters around LeBron, and the shooters they do have, you have to then put defenders around them because they can't guard a piece of paper lying on the court. It's just a mess. LeBron and Westbrook, I knew it wasn't going to work. It's not working. Like, you look at the games that Westbrook plays when LeBron's been off the court, which has been a lot this season, whether through injury, through sickness, suspension, you name it. This is the most unavailable we've ever seen LeBron. So I'm starting to wonder if like maybe we'll see more games LeBron takes off. It's clear Anthony Davis can't carry this roster by himself, which that should make Laker fans terrified when LeBron leaves town, whenever that is, whether it's through retirement or for his next destination, wherever Bronny ends up. Um, it's just this situation is bad. They made the flashy, big name, hometown guy trade, and the only way I think they get rid of Westbrook, if that's what they want to do and pull a 2018 Cavs, is they're going to have to buy him out because no one wants to take on his $44 million contract. It might be more than that. Who's going to take that?
The Rockets. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Okay. So then they get John Wall.
No.
Does that fix the Lakers problem? No. So no. This thing, I am 100% buying. This thing is closer to falling apart than it is to work. And I'm sure you're going to have a different view on this. So I'll pass the mic to you. What do you think about this?
Yeah. I'm selling this, man. I really am. The Lakers, to me, they're on the verge of something a little bit. I'm not saying they're just going to take off and go, lossless the rest of the season. I mean, it has not been pretty this far, and I will straight up say that. I'm a man of integrity. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the Lakers have been anywhere close to a great team this season, because they have not. But, Russ, LeBron, and AD have only played a few games together. I think they're only sitting at with 3 of them. I think it's definitely less than 10 games together. It might even be around the 6 or 7 games together they've actually played. That's just not enough time to get that chemistry we saw last year with the Nets big 3 and Kyrie and Harden and KD, where they never played a game together. The 3 of them never were on the court together at the same time. And I think we're seeing that a little bit with the Lakers, but we've seen games where Russ, he got off to a really slow start. We're starting to see him come back to a little bit what he is. And as long as you know what he is he'll put up numbers. But my big thing is if you could take the ball out of his hand when you're trying to close out a game and put it in LeBron's and let him close the game like he's done his entire career, they can have a chance to go on a run where Russ and AD start to play better, surrounded by LeBron. LeBron continues to be almost a secondary scorer. We've seen we've seen him put up some big totals this year, but I don't think anybody really is looking for that from LeBron. They're looking for him to more be a distributor, but he can do that. He can close out games. So for me, I'm selling this right now. I think they could still make a run. They're hanging right around that 500 mark. Like we talked about the Blazers, and their season is far from over if you ask me. But
I got a way out there trade scenario that could save the Lakers season.
What's that?
If you want to hear it out.
Let's hear it.
So this requires the Sacramento Kings being more dysfunctional. Well, I shouldn't say more dysfunctional, but
that's doable. Yeah.
About as dysfunctional as we all know, and love them for. You take Westbrook. Okay. I don't know exactly how the contracts line up. It might work, but then you bring back Buddy Hield and you bring back De'Aaron Fox. I mean, the Kings. This situation is weird. I don't think they fully believe in De'Aaron Fox. And you bring in one of the best shooters in the NBA in Buddy Hield, which that's who the Lakers should have traded for instead of Westbrook over the summer anyway. But like I said, it's way out there. You have to catch the Kings on like their peak dysfunctional day, probably like a really bad Monday after a loss. And they're like, you know what? Westbrook tickets will soar because he's a big name. So that's the only way that the Lakers will fit into your 1% chance at upsetting either the Warriors or the Suns.
We'll see. We'll see. Things will get going. But our last buy or sell that we have here is this one kind of snuck up on us a little bit when I was looking at the standings. But Jared, are you buying or selling that Denver will miss out on the playoffs this year?
I'm going to sell that for right now. It's still too early. Jamal Murray's not back yet. We don't know the full extent to Michael Porter Jr.'s injury timetable.
Yeah,
and recovery.
He's out for the year is what I've heard.
That's what they're saying?
That's what I've heard, at least.
Jokic was last year's MVP. The West is so close, and there's a bunch of these teams that have issues like Portland, LA. So it's not like everyone ahead of them right now is at the peak of their powers. The Clippers are another team. They don't have Kawhi, and they're right now, I think they've lost 6 7 out of their last 10.
Mm-hmm.
So 3-7 over the last 10 games. There are a lot of other teams in a hole right along with them right now. Their roster is decimated, but I figure that Jokic, who's one of the healthier stars in the NBA, is going to put together an MVP caliber season and keep this team afloat. So I'm not ready to sell away Denver's season.
Yeah, I'm buying that the Nuggets will be on the outside of the playoffs. And
Oh,
here's the reason why. So we know the Warriors, Suns, and Jazz are in. We know those 3 are in. So those are 3 spots taken. The Grizzlies right now are rolling without their best player, and they're up there. So, and Luka and Paul George have really kind of kept their teams afloat. I know you just said the Clippers are struggling recently, and that's true. But right now, when you look, they're above Denver as far as standings go. So there's 3 more spots in Grizzlies, Mavericks, and Clippers. So then they're in a fight to me with the Lakers, the Blazers, and the Timberwolves for the final 2 spots. And when I'm starting to look at the amount of injuries that the Nuggets has sustained right now, as of this moment, I trust all 3 of those teams more than I trust Denver. Because don't get me wrong, Jokic is great. Jokic is an absolute fantastic player. But if I believe that if it was like a 3-game series, if they lined up against the Lakers, I think the Lakers take that. Right now, if they lined up against the Timberwolves, I think the Timberwolves would take that. Because in my mind, they have Karl-Anthony Towns and they have a perimeter scoring. Anthony Edwards is turning into a star right before our very eyes. And you look at the Blazers, who Dame and CJ, I know what they're going to be capable of, and I know they're struggling right now, but they're the type of guys where the pressure gets hot, it becomes Dame time. So I'm just looking at, they just seem to be right now the one that gets left out when I'm kind of just going through the numbers and looking at the Western Conference. You know, things could change. I just think injuries, this happens sometimes. They ruin seasons for teams, and the Nuggets have really been bit by that injury bug, and I see them on the outside looking in when this all comes to a close.
Well, it should definitely be interesting to see how this Western Conference team or this playoff picture kind of settles once we get into May, or I'm sorry, April, and then getting into May. So I'm really excited to see where it ends up. I think I had Denver as my 3 seed this year.
Yeah, I had them up there too.
I don't think they're going to get back to there, but I'm hoping they can at least squeak into the playoffs.
Definitely. So now we got to move on to our last and our final segment here on the Team Up podcast, and that's Tee 'em Up. So Jarrett, who deserves to be teed up this week?
Well, with the Thunder's big loss, I felt like everyone's talking about it. It's way too easy. That's way too easy, right? For my tee it up this month or this week. But if I do tee up the Thunder, it does give me time to go on my anti-Thunder soapbox. So I'm teeing up the Thunder this week, the whole entire franchise. I'm talking top to bottom. GM, the owner, Clay Bennett. This is some Clay Bennett karma. What can I say? The biggest loss in NBA history. Just trading for draft picks, everything. The fact that they're an NBA franchise in the middle of Oklahoma. I was just teeing them up for all of it. You know what? Send them back to Seattle, because somebody somewhere in that city, I'm sure, can do something a lot better than what's sitting in Oklahoma right now. The fans in Seattle deserve it. They would never stand for their team to lose by 73 points. And you just get rid of the Oklahoma City Thunder. It was a silly name, silly color scheme to begin with, and you got rid of one of the most historical NBA franchises of all time. Just please send them back to Seattle. I'm teaming up the Oklahoma City Thunder. That's all I got to say. Bring back the Supersonics. I'm all for it.
Joining the Klay Thompson hype train, who was saying that during his Instagram live this week. Bring back the Sonics, man. But I literally wrote down on my notes here that the first thing I wrote down, I'll read it, quote, "Well, it'd be really easy to tee up the OKC Thunder for setting a not so great record. But I'm teeing up the NBA refs. And more specifically, the refs during the Hornets Bulls game this last week. So after getting teed up, LaMelo Ball disagreed with the refs and slapped his hand on the ground in disgust after he thought should have been a foul call. He was then teed up by the referee, and he hated that call so much that he decided to tell the official, and it was all caught on microphone, that after he's done hooping, he's going to start reffing to show that ref how it's done. And this was perfect to me. This was, I'm all for a little smack talk, and I love that the referee didn't get mad about it and tee him up again and toss him or anything like that. But It was very ballsy for he's there playing against his brother. You know, it's a high emotion type of game. He thought he was fouled. He just hit a simple smack on the ground, and the referee teed him up for it. So he came over and is, you know what, man, when I'm done hooping, I'm going to start reffing just to show you how it's done. And I hope this happens. I don't think it ever will, but how crazy would that be? And that would be something that like a LaMelo Ball would do, play in the league for like 15 years, put together a real nice career, you know, got a lot of fans, and who knows where his career goes. But then all of a sudden he retires and he just goes straight into training to be a ref. And he literally does it for just a couple years or something, just to come back and say, I did it, and I did it better than that guy who reffed me and teed me up back then.
I can tell you one thing, House of Highlights is definitely going to put all his calls on.
Oh, yeah.
Every single one.
Oh, yeah. No, it was awesome to me, man. It was, I don't think it'll ever happen, but come on, refs. You can't get shown up like that by LaMelo Ball. And I thought that was absolutely hilarious. So I got to tee up the NBA refs in the Hornets and Bulls game, man. But that's all we have for you guys this week. We want to thank you guys all for joining us and all of the support. Be sure to check us out at Tee 'em Up on all of the social media platforms: Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. Message us what you think, anything that we say that you think we might be wrong at, which might be a lot because, you know, that's what we do. But go ahead.
I'm never wrong, by the way.
No, okay.
Jace could say he's wrong sometimes, but I'm going to stay on the record. I'm never wrong.
So. Okay. We'll see about that. But we'll be back next week with another episode of Tee 'em Up as we continue to dive deeper into the NBA season. So thanks so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Make sure to share us with your family and friends.